So we've researched a book, we've written a book, we found a publisher for a book. Hi, James. We have had the book manufactured. We have launched a book, which we did a couple of weeks ago. And so now we have the book. But the thing about the book is, unlike traditional books where they are constrained by the tyranny of binding, we've produced a book that is unbound. And why have we done that, Nick?
All sorts of reasons. So multiple people can read the book together at once. So you can read the book in a random order. So you can shuffle the book into a random order. So you can sort of take the book with you if you're thinking like, well, this feels particularly appropriate today. So you as the reader can be more interactive with the book than the more traditional formats, because that's what the material lends itself to.
And I think maybe more unusually for a non-fiction book, we also don't really have a thesis other than if we were to provide 120 stories about randomness to somebody in a form which they could read them randomly, then they themselves might come up with some theories about randomness, as I think both you and I have since writing the book, but they're not in the book, which is a bit confusing for some.
Thesis is probably this is interesting, and that's as deep as it gets so far. Like, then when a particular subject comes up, then our thinking on it gets deeper. But overall, it's just this is an interesting subject that really interested us. We think it'll interest readers too.
And because it's not in this usual format, theoretically people I think get the idea, but until you actually hold it in your hands, it still doesn't quite make full sense, which means that we need to think about how we market this thing somewhat differently to how traditionally book publishing and book marketing has gone, because it's a very, very steady industry.
The curse of knowledge has become really clear in that because we've worked on this for so long and thought about book formats so much, and feel as with all authors or publishers or whatever, you feel like you've talked about it so much, surely everybody's paid attention, everybody understands you, and everybody's maybe a bit bored, which is completely not the case. Is I've been in a couple of meetings recently where I started explaining it, and thankfully people were kind enough to just ask blatantly, well, explain how it works. And then suddenly you show them and show the unbound pages, show that it starts with a question, show that every story in it is half to three quarters to nine tenths of a thought. It really is get the reader to start thinking about what you've written and add their own knowledge and experience to it.
Is we're going to apply randomness to how we market the book. And we're doing this in a couple of stages. The first thing, which we did a couple of weeks ago, is put a call out on the internet, which is a little harder these days since Twitter is no longer a thing. But what we did, put a thing out on the various channels we were on and said, who do other people think we should get this into the hands of? Who are the people who are going to be curious about this book about randomness? Who are the people who have some modicum of influence around them who would, if we got it into their hands and they started talking about it, it would be advantageous for them because they've had this experience of this amazing book, and it would be advantageous for us because it means that they will spread the word a little bit. So we've got that list. I think we've got 81 people on the list so far. Every week for the foreseeable future, up to maybe 50 weeks, we are going to be randomly selecting a name from that list to see if we can reach them to get a book into their hands. And we just don't want to have their address so that we can post it to them. So the way we're going to do this is we have the 50, I get to see that, yeah, there we go. The 50 degrees of random. Press it. Shall I press the button? Okay, here we go. And this will select the first name. And the first name is... Oh, interesting. Matthew Syed. So Matthew Syed is an author. He's written some particularly fascinating books. The one that I remember most is a thing called, I think, Black Box Thinking. He's done quite a bit about creativity. He's done quite a bit about challenging the general assumptions about how the world of people works. I definitely think he is somebody who could be interested in random the book. Do you know of Matthew Syed, Nick?
I read and liked Rebel Ideas. But again, it's one of those books that I think very, very roughly says you want diverse groups to think together. and just having a quick look at Wikipedia. I
Wasn't
can
he something weird like a badminton or a squash
table
champion?
tennis.
Table tennis. I knew it was a
He's
racket sport of some sort.
Yeah, he's gone from table tennis to journalist. Looking at Wikipedia, the greatest, what sport teaches us about achieving success, he wrote in 2017, which is a pet theory of mine. Sport, as we've discussed, sport as compressed reality is a really good discipline, really good set of events to learn ideas from and learn concepts and what works and what doesn't. So that's all interesting.
Do you know him?
No, not at all.
Neither do I. I've got a few ideas about how I might be able to get somebody who does know him. I mean, obviously, I can look on LinkedIn, and I'll do that later. But there's a few people who immediately spring to mind who might be in similar circles to the ones that Matthew Side circulates in.
So where do we go from here? Do either of us
Well,
know anyone who knows him, or does anyone watching or listening to this know anyone who knows him?
I think that's a crucial thing. If you know Matthew Side, and like in the way to be able to say, Matthew, there's this book that these two slightly strange gentlemen have produced, which I think you'd find really interesting. Would you like to meet them and see see the book? I think it's at that sort of level of familiarity we need. We'll do our own digging. We won't update you by video, and we won't necessarily complete this in the week. That's the other thing about this project is we don't expect him to be able to, actually make contact in the first week. It probably is going to take longer than that for most people, but it's to be able to get them up and running and to manage the workload for us a bit. So if you know Matthew Syed, if you know somebody who knows Matthew Syed at that sort of level of could make the introduction, get in touch with us. And if you want to add more names to the list, equally get in touch with us with the names, and we'll add them to the list for the next draw, which will be hopefully next week.